many of the times the preservation of these artifacts, or the preservation of these old structures and or ancient things are in the religious form. Like you have a temple, maybe the temple's various aspects are actually very historically very important in terms of reconstructing, but they are now treated as a deity and they are worshipped. Many of these aspects. Have you come across such things during your research?
There are numerous such examples which we can state where archaeological objects are being recycled because see, primarily the social philosophy in Indian culture doesn't allow you to believe in permanence of anything, so
Yeah.
we recycle everything, including material and the abstract aspect of our culture. We recycle our items, we recycle everything. So there are cases like I was working on Sopara for 10 years or more than that to identify archaeological remains, and virtually every village around Sopara has remains coming from 8th to 12th century AD, now being worshipped in different forms. So there might be some pillar object which is being worshipped as a Shiva Lingam or something like that.
Right.
When we took up study of Mumbai, within the periphery of Marol area, we have found remains of five temples dating back to 10th to 12th century AD. So probably 5 temples of the similar size of Ambarnath temple were there near Marol, in the vicinity of Marol. And virtually whatever we have found, that is in a form of fragments which are under worship in some or the other form. There is a temple near Marol bus depot where there is a temple that is known as the temple of Kamala Devi. That is actually a part of a door frame of the temple, which is now being worshipped as a Kamala Devi. So such things has happened, and like we don't feel anything odd because we do not consider the god as an idol in the temple. The temple itself is a body of God. So any fragment becomes God for us.
Right. And also, sir, as you initially mentioned, that if you have to trace back the history of India, the archaeological history of India, probably every village can give some history.
Yes.
So I think it is an issue of abundance. We have abundance of archaeological evidences. It has become commonplace for people.
We are not aware. We are actually not aware.
Correct.
Yeah. See, when we started with this Mumbai project, people had laughed at me saying, "What are you going to get in Mumbai? There is nothing in Mumbai." But when we started working it, it's enormous data.
Right. But absolutely. So nobody could imagine that the bus stop they have been taking buses every day from nearby, that is an archaeological site or of importance. It's very difficult to. So so it could be the problem of abundance that we have. So, sir, especially in this kind of a situation, right? Especially in India, taking a specific case of India, where we see that these archaeological things, probably if you go on researching, you find abundance of things that you will find everywhere. What is the sanctity of research, which is there today in the field, and what you believe, even for people who are entering into this field in terms of research, what is the sanctity that needs to be maintained? Because very easy, and this we are used to in some way. We like exaggerating things, and in some way we like underplaying things. We do both. If it's the importance, also we underplay things, like you said, something near the depot. Also, you don't know it is what kind of a site, and few other areas we like to exaggerate. So how do you, with this kind of a background which most of the people have, how do you bring this kind of a sanctity in this research in this field? Do you think it is there for people who are coming in? And if it is not, what would you say should be there for people who are entering into this kind of a research?
See, primarily when we talk about research related to archaeology or history, it is nothing else but the perception of a man about his past.
Yeah.
So perception is basically relative. So there cannot be true or false history. There can be only rational or irrational history. So if you have to maintain the sanctity of any scientific discipline, primarily one has to be rational. One has to be relying upon primary sources instead of secondary sources. And one has to follow all scientific methods in the analysis. I'm not saying scientific methods is basically laboratory work. Even in social sciences, there are methods which are scientific methods. So there are theories, there are models, there are various types of methodologies which we need to follow rigorously. It
Right.
cannot be simply that I have a Facebook page or WhatsApp page and then I become an archaeologist or historian because I just live next to the archaeological site. That cannot happen. And that is the major issue right now. In one of the public lectures, I had made a very courageous statement that it is nowadays very easy to become an archaeologist or historian. You just have to start a Facebook page. And then you say that I am like a student of archaeology or enthusiast archaeologist. See, there is nothing called archaeology enthusiast. There is nothing called that. Student of history in naam pe, like anything people keep writing. And when it is challenged, then it has to be explained rationally.
Right.
So any kind of irrational argument or radical argument is definitely dangerous not only to the science or the field but also to the society, because objective of social sciences like history, archaeology, they are wider. They are to shape the future of the society and pave the foundation of ethics which society is going to follow in future.
Correct.
So if you are
Correct.
tampering that, then you are tampering your own society. So it has to be rational. But we have to always remember that our rational statement is going to be challenged by other rational statements. It never happens that is my final statement. And that is the
Right.
scientific method.
Right.
So it should not be like this that I have written a book and that is the final word. No. Somebody is going to write a book, and so that kind of mindset will ultimately help us in bringing in sanctity in the research, I will say. And that is true for any social science.
True. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, you would like to add something to this?
Yes, that is perfectly correct. I will give you one example. When in ancient India, there was Khandan Mandan Prakriya, that is rational debating.
Yes.
Till that moment, when it was rational debate, it was very scientific method. True research was going on. But when that Khandan Mandan Prakriya became to show that how my point is correct and your point is wrong, so when there is a Jai Parajay or winner and losership came into around 6th, 7th century AD, then that entire knowledge system has gone. So the true nature of that debate or true nature of spreading the knowledge and doing research has finished. There is the end of the scientific method. There is the end of the knowledge spread. So we have to keep in mind that we have to be rational. We have to use all those scientific methodology, research methodology. One should be aware what he is talking. We cannot just speak without any proof. When you speak anything without any solid proofs, it is not true research. When you don't know ABC in Sanskrit or Prakrit or Tamil and all, and you are talking about the textual references with the help of translations in English or Hindi or any vernacular language, the true meaning is you are missing that true meaning. So all these things are happening. So research is not just a play. And what they do on social media, they are just describing the thing. For example, anybody wants to speak on temple architecture, they are just giving the description, physical description of temple architecture. They don't speak about the ritualism. They don't speak the other socio-economic, cultural aspect of that particular temple. They don't speak about the entire archaeology or entire tangible and intangible heritage around that temple. So we have to see or we have to think about the all the aspects. So holistic approach is very, very important. Otherwise, it would be a one-sided research. Yes, I am doing research on temple. I am explaining the temple. I am explaining the technical details about the temple. That's all. So this
Right.
is an incomplete research, and every research, every viewpoint, it is corrected by later period. So it is not like that. 100 years ago it was true, but yes, in within the 100 years we have received so many other new
True.
archaeological remains, or even our understanding in textual readings are grown up. So
Correct.
we have to aspect that change. Change is the only permanent thing. The others are impermanent things. So we have to accept that. We should be broad-minded, and I think the students should be trained in this manner right from their secondary education when they have in fifth standard or seventh standard. Otherwise, we only teach history just to be proud of that particular history. Yes, we belong to this region, so we are proud of the history. Proud, feeling proud is good, but proud is just an emotion. We
Right.
have to accept history, and that's why I say iti ho asa. What happened is what happened. We should have the faithfulness to the history. We should not tamper any historical or archaeological evidences, and we should not twist it. Generally nowadays they have their conclusion first, and as per their conclusions they do their research. So this is not the true research. So we
True.
should maintain the research sanctity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, ma'am and sir, this has always been my thought process. Whenever I used to think about research or a PhD, I used to always think, let it be any field related to the social sciences or literature or anything. We have this phrase we use in Sanskrit, charvita charvana. You keep on grinding the same thing. You have to, one text is there, there will be 100 PhDs on the same text. And the only area that I felt, because I did this manuscriptology actually opened eye to that, is when you are taking the only new research can be if you have found some new manuscript, if you have found some new archaeological evidence, if you have found some new epigraph. These are the things that bring to light something which was earlier hidden. And now starts a new stream. Even if I look at the history, there are so many times when somebody discovers something, and then an entire stream of research starts just behind that. So I always felt but that is probably the least looked on area. That is probably an area which most people don't want to do research on because of the time it takes, because of the effort you need to put into that, and because of all the allied things that you need to know. As you rightly said, ma'am, if one single manuscript you have to edit and put it up on a publishing, then you should know the script, you should know how to handle the manuscript, and 100 other things to literally bring it to life. So I feel sometimes that is, I actually feel sad that that area is not getting enough of those things. So what would be your viewpoint? Because you are seeing these kind of requests from students day in and day out, and you're also seeing the scene as it is happening today. So what would be your reflections or
See,
reactions on?
manuscriptology is very interesting field, but to edit the manuscript is not a joke. It is not one thing. What happens? What I have found in particularly in Sanskrit field, when you are fresh MA postgraduate student, and you think that I have got this particular manuscript, and I will edit it. I know Sanskrit. I am MA in Sanskrit. I can edit it. It's not that so easy. It is not cakewalk. Not at all.
Right.
For example, I know one student who has done his PhD on one manuscript which belongs to Vedanta. But even if he has to do the PhD on one manuscript of Vedanta, he had to relocate all other allied manuscripts. And not only that, that particular he was doing on Shankar Vedanta and that particular 18th century manuscript commentary. So he has to study the various aspects of Vedanta text, not only Shankara but other acharyas also, their commentaries also, and why this particular manuscript is important in that entire Vedanta, what we call field. Okay,
Right.
this
Right.
fortunately his guide was very good, and she was thoroughly in her field, so she could guide him, and he did a perfect job, or he did justice to that manuscript. But I
Right.
have seen many students also, they take one manuscript, they do the editorial, that is also sub-editorial thing, the grammatical mistakes, the other superficial
Yeah.
changes and all those things, and they don't go into deep about the text and about that thing. So we
Yeah.
have to be very careful.
Right.
Unfortunately, in our education system, at the BA undergraduate level or MA level, postgraduate level, we are not trained in methodology. We are not trained in various aspects of our subject. When you are doing PG, our university should make that 2, 3 allied courses compulsory. If you
Right.
are doing archaeology, you should learn one classical language. Like that, we can
True.
introduce, or we can do that. We had attempted this, but unfortunately we were not successful in that. Or when suppose you are learning epigraphy, script they are taught, but the language, the relationship between the text, all these things are to be introduced. And another important thing, every fresh postgraduate student should know whether he or she has research ability or research potentiality or not. Just because of after MA, I want to do PhD. This attitude is not important.
We'll go one step ahead and say logical reasoning has to be included in full syllabus. You're just talking about
Yeah,
college.
great.
I
Yes,
will say logical reasoning
yes,
should be introduced at very young age. So
Yes.
people grow up rationally,
Yeah. So that's a nice statement.
correct.
They grow up rationally.
Absolutely
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely right.
because the most of the schools and like education systems have tradition where it has been taught that not to ask questions. And how will they grow rationally?
True.
That is.
No, no,
True.
So
absolutely.
by,
And always, sir and ma'am, when I speak to people, it's very rarely that people think about these things. That even the common things that you read or you assume you have taken for granted, like it could be the Ramayana or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever it is. It needed some kind of a manuscriptologist to look at the manuscripts that were there in some other script, had to decode the whole thing, had to do proof editing, and then first an edited copy had to be published. Then it started getting reprinted, and then you have a very ready-made thing in whatever form or shape that you want. But each of the texts that you have today, at least the major texts that you have today, each of that has taken a lot of effort, in all these steps for somebody or some scholar in these areas, an expert in these areas to do these things. And probably if you don't add enough to those people, we will not be able to unearth more treasures that we have left, or which is up further there for the future. And as you rightly said, sir, I think in schools, many of these things can be easily introduced because it's easier to learn many of these things. Because the older we grow and we start learning scripts and everything, it becomes an entirely difficult job for you to even memorize these scripts and keep remembering what alphabet is what. I know this topic is not for an hour, or so each of the points that we discuss itself requires a lot of discussion, deliberation, and explanation. So, which definitely the objective of this session was at least to make people aware. I think it's been a wonderful session, sir, and a wonderful session, ma'am. I'm very happy that we could have you on the panel to at least give us a glimpse of what this entire field is. We will try to see if in the future some specific sessions can be organized and you could educate our people more on specific areas
Yes,
of
sure.
all these aspects.
thank
So
you.
thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot,
Thanks
ma'am.
a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Thank
ma'am.
you, Subbu. It was a nice experience. Thanks.
Thanks, ma'am.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, Rasikas, as you can see, this is a very, very important aspect of our culture, of our education system, of our civilization itself. There is one aspect of blindly believing certain things. There is one aspect of completely negating all that is old or all that is ancient is bad. And there is other aspect of just blindly believing that everything that is ancient or old is good. the only way you can come to terms, the only way that you can remain in the middle path is when you are seeking the truth. And seeking the truth is what the philosophers of this land have always tried to do. Be it Shankara, be it Ramanuja, be it Madhva, be it Acharyas, even before them, the philosophers before them, the great Acharyas and different, they've all been seekers of truth in this land. And that is how they have been able to unearth or find different aspects of our nature. And that is why we excelled in so many fields in this land. And one of the key aspects of knowing the truth is what we discussed over the last few minutes. This field of archaeology, this field of manuscriptology, this field of epigraphy, in helping reconstruct our past. I think it's a very critical chain, to link us back to our past. And doing this with honesty and integrity, with no vested interests or no bias, doing it for knowing the truth and truth alone. And that is why as they mentioned, it can change because you have still not hit the truth. So at this point of time, this seems to be the truth, but when you discover something, that thing changes. So the seeking for the truth or wanting to know the truth alone can help us progress on this field. This is try to give a very, very overview of this area. This has got a lot more to deep dive in, but I'm sure all of you would have at least liked the first glimpse that we gave on this aspect. We will try to see in the future if we can take up specific sessions on some of the discoveries that they mentioned during the course of this talk. Any specific deep dives we can do in where they can explain to you in detail what were the activities done, what was the outcomes, etc., which can make it a bit more interesting. We'll try to take this up in our future sessions. Until then, keep watching the different sessions of Subbu's Corner on the YouTube channel and Facebook page. And until we meet next, namaskar.